Hi, everyone. It is Jamie Jill right here with Mad Lit Musings. And today I have with us a very special author because I read all her books. She's amazing. We have Morgan Busse with us. Hi, Morgan.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for having me.
I am super excited to have you. And we're recording this. So your book comes out in August. We are recording this in February, and we're not even entirely sure quite yet when we're going to air this. So who knows how much time will pass between this conversation and then. But as of today, yesterday, you just revealed the cover for your upcoming novel, The Winter's Maiden, right? Did I get the title right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you did.
Okay. So it's a gorgeous cover, first and foremost.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really excited. But Enclave Publishing does really great covers.
Yes, I do. I love
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Did you have a lot of say in the cover?
So usually what they do is, they ask for input, like, what are your ideas? What is the feel? All that stuff, that sheet we all fill out.
Right.
And then they came back with the cover. And the biggest thing is, especially since it has the word maiden in it, we really
Mhm.
wanted to make sure people didn't think it was a damsel in distress because she is seriously like the opposite of a
Right.
damsel in distress. We really wanted to showcase that because it's Viking inspired, that
Right.
Viking feel, that winter feel, obviously, and
Mhm.
that she's a fighter,
Mhm.
not a princess or anything like that. So
This is not a medieval fairy tale story by any means.
no, not at all. Nope, nope.
Yeah, don't be dis what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what word I'm looking for, so we're just gonna make fun of. Don't be misled by the word maiden. It is not Rapunzel. It is Viking. Viking,
Yes.
Viking. Now, when you say Viking inspired, does this have a fantasy element to it? Or is it a Norwegian Viking story? Or tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So, actually, um, this is the prequel, although you
Okay.
don't have to have read the series. This is actually the prequel to my original first series I ever wrote, fantasy series, Follower of the Word.
Okay.
And this takes place 400 years before. And in that world, I have a country way in the far north called Nordica.
Hmm.
Huh, can't tell what that is, right?
Not sure where you got that from,
Um,
but whatever.
and and in my first series, I'd mentioned something called the Nordic Wars, and that's something that
Okay.
shaped the world to where it is today in that series.
Okay.
And I always wanted to dive back in and actually look at what the Nordic Wars were.
Hmm.
And so now I'm finally writing that series. So
Oh, that's so cool. Okay. So this is really
so
like,
it does have the fantasy elements. Anyone who's read Follow the Word is going to be excited to see little bits of here and there, different races that they came to know in that series. Find out why the world changed, what happened to it. Yeah. So don't
awesome.
want to give away too much.
No, no, obviously don't want to. So the exciting part is for those of us who haven't read that first set of your books, we can wait, we can read this one, and then we have the
Yep.
story, or we can go ahead and get started and read the other set and then go back in time, which is kind
Yeah.
of what I did with the actual show, The Vikings. Was I watched the show The Vikings, and then they came out with Vikings Valhalla, which is pre-Vikings. That's how the Vikings got
Yep.
started. So I watched it all backwards, and so that's okay. It works.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. But so it's Viking influence, but it's not necessarily built off of actual Nordic Viking wars or areas like historical
Nope.
facts.
Nope. I
Okay.
made up all my stuff. When I say inspired, you have a lot of the clothing. I do make up my own words though
Okay.
that has that um Nordic sound
Feeling.
and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no raids, no ships or anything like that, but I do have clan systems and tattoos and different types of warfare that so I did a lot of my research, the way
Hmm.
they lived, their agriculture and stuff, I placed into the world. So it's gonna have that feel to it, but it's not actually, the
Yes.
Scandinavian
Right.
countries or their history.
Right. So this isn't historical fiction. This is more of a fantasy speculative fiction with that feel and that
Yep,
vibe. Got it. Got it.
yep.
Perfect. Oh, I love it. I'm sold. End of podcast. Let's go to the bookstore right now.
Well, I can get it out and start reading
I
it.
was gonna say,
No.
can you read us the first chapter?
Right?
Yeah, like wait a second. That should be a prerequisite for being on my podcast is you have to send me your copy, whether it's done or not.
Oh, it is done. I'm actually halfway done with the second book already,
Oh,
so
hey.
it's chugging along, so
Yes, yes. Awesome. Okay, so this story then, what's the premise as far as tell us a little bit about our hero, our heroine, what's happening in their
yep.
world?
So, the heroine, her name is Bridget,
Yeah.
and, in the, Nordic society that she's a part of, there's clans. She's
Okay.
actually clanless because she does not belong to any clan, and there's a certain caste system going on, and when you're clanless, you're kinda seen as not as wanted
Yeah.
in their
Mm-hmm.
society and stuff, so this is her struggle with being plus they've been having a lot of hard winters, so there's a lot of poverty going on,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people just struggling to live, and so that's her world that she's been born into,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to survive.
Okay.
Um, Also, I really love this story because she's an unwanted pregnancy, and
Mm.
nobody knows who she really is. The midwife that delivered her actually, instead of leaving her on the mountain, which was something you would do with illegitimate children in that
Okay.
time, takes her in and raises her as her own daughter.
Mm.
So I have that adoption that, sometimes the people we love and who are our parents aren't necessarily our blood parents, and so
Right.
I show a lot of that in the story, so I just so I keep saying that because 'cause I'm trying to figure out how not
Right.
to tell the whole
I know
story.
it's so hard to talk about it without giving
But
spoilers.
so here's the biggest thing. I love that she's a survivor, and that's one
Okay.
of the taglines I have for this. She survives, she finds ways to survive, but also under the guidance of someone is saying, "Hey, there's certain lines we don't cross when we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to survive." And she's trying to figure out what are you willing to do so that you can live,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, and I share this in the back blurb, she's able to enter a competition where she fights and is able to. Um, she eventually joins the war that starts to happen, and she has a chance to be able to join a clan if she fights well.
Ah, okay. All right.
So,
So that's the hope for her is to find that place of identity within
yep,
the clan system. So she's got that
yeah,
that belonging. Got it. Okay. All right.
yep.
Sounds cool. I'm assuming there's like danger and trouble that's going to meet her along the way.
Yes, and I'll give you a few hints. So there's
Okay.
supernatural stuff going on. There's um there's some beings that have power who are doing things they shouldn't.
Okay.
That's typical fantasy.
Oh yeah, exactly.
If you've read Follow the Words, you know who some of these
Hmm.
bad guys are.
Okay.
The biggest thing though, and I wanted to bring into this, and I don't know what happened. I just started writing the book and I realized that she has a peculiar ability to feel death. She can feel death when it's coming along. So living in these bitter winters where people are dying off because of starvation and
Hmm.
stuff, builds this fear of she doesn't know what happens after death. She can feel it when it comes
Okay.
for people. And then what do you do when you're on the battlefield and you
Right.
can feel death? So I ain't gonna give away anything, but I don't know
Oh,
why that entered my book, but all of a sudden I realized,
it's
oh
there.
wow, she ever since she's always been able
Yeah.
to feel it, and that's part of her journey because I'll be honest, there's been a lot of death in my life the last 2 years,
Yeah.
and that's been really hard.
Hmm.
I wanted to how do we deal with death? It's very
Yeah.
scary. It is,
It is.
especially as people start to approach that time. So
Right.
that's one of the themes through the 3 books that's her journey of learning what is death, what is on the other
Hmm.
side,
Hmm.
why do we fear it, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
death is a huge part of her culture and her own journey.
I think that's a really important topic to discuss, especially within the faith fiction world. Sorry, I'm silencing my phone here so it doesn't go off. Um, because I think within Christianity, there's a struggle between the balance of grief, of the belief that we know what comes after, and then the processing all of that. And how do you? So, I think it's
Yeah.
a neat thing to focus on in a story. What have you found with that? I don't want to get too personal here, but with your personal experience of late, how much of that did you find fed into writing this character and her own journey to understanding? the death and dying and grief
But
process?
honestly, it's my own journey.
Mm,
Ever since I remember being young and I knew who God was and I knew who Jesus was
mhm.
and I knew, you know, I think up here we know we shouldn't be afraid of death, but
Right,
there's still that unknown. And ultimately, no one's come back except Jesus. No one's
right,
come back and told us, "Hey, you know, it really wasn't that bad."
right.
And I kind of allude to that. She finally shares a little bit with the midwife who's her mother, and she's a very old lady when she adopts
Okay,
Bridget already. So,
mhm,
you know, she doesn't got much time.
right.
But one thing she tells Bridget that I think starts to become the basis for this is that death is really you close your eyes and then when you open them again, you're in a different place.
Mhm,
I've had to have some surgeries, and I kind of liken it to that because with
mm,
surgery, they put you under
mhm,
and they start doing the countdown, and you close your eyes, and then you open your eyes, and you're on the other side of the
right,
surgery.
right.
And I think some ways of coming into death is
Mhm,
very painful, very scary, very
yeah,
horrible.
yeah,
But there comes that moment where it's literally you close your eyes and then you open your eyes and you're on the other side of it.
right,
So,
right.
I'm tying some of that in, and honestly,
Mhm,
this is still a journey of mine.
yeah,
I'm every I'm still figuring out how I'm gonna end all of this, so I can't, you
right,
know, I'm
right,
still figuring it out
right,
how
right.
I'm gonna share that in the next 2 books, but
Mhm.
yeah.
It was interesting. So obviously I put death in a lot of my books too. And I
Uh-huh.
used to joke that I grew up in a funeral home. I didn't really. And I didn't have anybody in my family that was actually in the, I don't want to say funeral business, but in that world. But I had so many relatives and friends pass away from the age of 8 all the way on up through high school. Felt like every year I was going, and it wasn't just the typical, oh, great great aunt so and so from Minnesota that I've never known passed away. It was literally people that were very integral to our family. So it was just
Mhm,
this consistent rolling through the funeral home growing up. So death was always very much a part of my existence. And then coming into the books that I write, and then my own mother passed away about 2.5 years ago. And walking her through that process. Um, I had the weirdest question come up in my brain, and I reached out to a dear friend of mine who's actually a mortician. She runs and owns a funeral home. And I asked her, I said, I have to ask you the weirdest question, but I've always wondered it. Does do people die with their eyes open or closed? Because you see on TV, like sometimes they just look so peaceful, and then other times their eyes are wide open.
mhm,
And then I'm like, I know it's kind of gross, but I have to ask. I said, I was with my mom when she passed. I said hers were closed, but she was already kind of in that semi conscious where it made sense.
mhm.
And my
Yeah,
friend responded with the most interesting theory. And she said, this is my theory. She said, it's really interesting that the people who have the most peaceful stories around the deaths of their loved ones' remains usually come to me and their eyes are closed. And she
mm,
said, the people who have the really horrific passings, the terrible ones, or the ones where they just have no faith in their, in
yeah,
their life, their religious background, etc. She said they almost always come to me with their eyes open. And
interesting.
she says, I have this strange theory that if you are peaceful with where your heart is with eternity and death, it is like just going to sleep, even though your body physically struggles. And she
Yep.
says that's a different type of
Yeah.
horror. She said, I'm not referring to the physical struggle.
Yep.
She says, I'm referring to the spiritual, internal, emotional struggle. And she says, for those who haven't really reconciled the concept of death, um, and what's to happen afterwards, she says, they always come to me with this aura of fear and this aura of, oh my gosh, this isn't what I was expecting. And she says, it's almost creepy. She says, it's creepier than anything else that I deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I bring that up just because it's interesting as you're talking about taking a character through her own journey of trying to understand death. And like you said, you're still trying to figure out how you're even going to resolve it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I have my ideas, but honestly, I haven't died yet either, so I'm figuring out
What's it like?
with, you know, me as a Christian
Mm-hmm.
and as, my father passed away, 6 years ago, and my
Mm-hmm.
stepdad passed away last year,
Hmm.
And so I've seen some death now and been a part of it.
Right.
Um, and I can ask them, hey, you
Right.
know, so what I want to do is show hope for people who are still alive.
Yeah.
Um, ultimately, what's on the other side is Jesus, but he's on
Mhm.
this side too. You know,
Right.
he's
Right.
actually he's um there's a passage where Paul talks about that and it's probably one of the Timothy's because it's near the end of his life where he says, God will bring me safely to his kingdom.
Mm.
And when I read that verse years ago, that's where I finally went, no matter how horrifically I go or not, you know, I think we all want to pass in our sleep.
Right. Right.
Let's
Right.
just be honest. But we don't always get to. I had a very close friend of mine from high school who just passed away from cancer after 4 years of
Oh,
fighting.
yeah.
That's not the best way to go out of this life.
No.
Um,
No.
but one thing is that we know that we will be brought safely to his kingdom.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And we will. And there is hope there. And the hope is that people find the hope that comes in death. And I think that's one of those things, and I'm sure you've probably experienced it yourself. But when you're involved in the passing of somebody who has that hope, it's a different experience altogether.
it's different.
Very
Yeah.
different. Even the grieving process, I found that I've talked almost flippantly at times about the grieving process with my mom. Not because I feel like it's a flippant situation, but because there's so much hope, I feel like I can approach it with an element of joy.
Yeah.
But then I've talked with some people where I'm like, wow, if I didn't know beyond the shadow of a doubt where my mom is, I don't know how you process grief at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it becomes a place of mystery and this vortex of, yeah, darkness that your heroine's probably exploring right now in her book.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So anyway, well, that took a deathly turn.
Right? Nice and dark here.
Nice and dark. But I like to talk about the deep things here at Mad Lit Musings because
Exactly.
I think sometimes you have to talk about those. I mean, you have podcasts and you can talk about the characters and how you figured out the character. How did you name your characters? Those are fun questions. I'm always like, and what are the deep, dark things that your characters are struggling with? Take us there, Morgan. Take us there.
Yeah.
So, okay. So in this book, is there a hero involved too? Is there an element of romance or is it more just adventure?
Yep, dual little points going on. So on the one hand, you have my heroine who is trying to establish her way into a clan by joining the war and being a
Hmm.
warrior. Not to give away a whole lot, but you find out there's more to her and she can fight.
Okay.
Like, and that's one thing that annoys me. I'm just gonna go on a little tirade here.
Go for it.
There's got to be a reason women are really good at fighting because we are built differently. So
Right.
you'll find out also, and as the book goes along, she calls it the red haze. She falls into a red haze and doesn't
Hmm.
remember the fight afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find out more what that is and why she can do it. And that is what enables her to fight more than, normal women.
Hmm.
And I'm saying this from a woman who I'm very competitive. I'm losing it, but I'm still pretty strong. You can ask my husband about that. He calls it my Viking blood when it
Ooh.
comes out. We met on the football field. He could bench press over 300 pounds, and
Hmm.
I knocked him to his back, and that was the first time we ever talked.
Atta
So
girl.
yeah, so I'm not at all putting down strong women. I
Right.
write strong women. I am for strong women.
Right.
But if you're going to write strong women who can compete with men, you got to show why they're faster,
Right.
they've learned technique, or they
Hmm.
have a supernatural ability or something. So anyway, there's my tirade.
No, it's true
But
though.
anyway,
It's
so
true.
she's got
Yep.
so I got this strong woman fighting for the North.
Okay.
Dual point. I have this, and I really wanted to do this. So I have this healer on the South side,
Hmm.
and we usually think of healers, men who are healers, small, scrawny. There's a
Yeah.
reason they're not fighting.
Right.
Not this guy.
Ooh.
I continue to allude to that he's huge, he's
Okay.
big, he's muscly. He actually, when you first meet him, he's been working in the quarry for years.
Oh,
He's
okay.
stocky, big. He's like over feet, big guy. And if you've read Follow the Word, there's a race of beings called the Eldarans. They are they're the servants of the word in
Okay.
this fantasy world. And so that is who he is. He's one of those. Um, there's different gifts that each of them have. And as the story progresses, you find out that he has no gift because his parents were brutally murdered in front of him, and
Mm,
that kind of put a stopper on everything inside of him. In
okay.
fact, he's run away. He wants nothing to do with humanity. He doesn't want to serve them. He doesn't want to, he's been hid in a quarry
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
as a lone man. But an old mentor of his says, "Hey, I need your help back home. Can you come home?" And so he really respects this old guy. So he's
Hmm.
like, "Okay, I'll come back." And that starts his journey of healing, of figuring out who he really is. But he doesn't fight. And so that's kind of the going gag in this whole
Interesting.
book
I like
is
that.
whenever like he walks into the war camp and
Uh-huh.
everyone's like, "Are you here for the war?" And he's like, "No, I'm a healer." And they're like, "What? What?" So I
I like
really
that.
love turning things on their
Yeah.
head
Yeah.
because and throughout the stories he explains you can do things with a strong body that doesn't involve fighting. So he's
Right.
almost like he's not a pacifist, but
Hmm.
he sees his duty as his both of his parents were healers. That's what the Eldarans really do is they help humanity and they're the voice of God and stuff.
Hmm.
And so I love this. Plus now you got he's on one side of the war and she's on the other. So what's gonna
Oh.
happen?
Oh, so they're not actually on the same
So
side either.
oh no,
That
no.
throws an altogether different spin on the story that was going through my brain. So
That's why you have to have 3 books.
I
It's gonna take
guess.
3 books to show how all this is gonna work out.
Yeah. And as an
So
author, you're like, thank God I have 3 books because at the end of book one, I still don't know how I'm going to do it.
yeah, yeah. So it's been fun to write his point of view, but also so his background, like I said, his parents were basically missionaries
Okay.
and they were killed. And that's made him not trust in God, not trust. And one thing he finally, and one part of the book, he says, if, and God's known as the word in the book, if the word loved his servants so much, why doesn't he protect them?
Mm.
And honestly, the past year and a half has been a huge, not to go through everything.
Mhm.
Honestly, the last 20 years of being in ministry, my husband's a pastor,
Yep.
we have been through a lot,
Yeah.
been hurt a lot, been betrayed, been let go of churches and stuff. And honestly, there are times when I'm like, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
God loves his servants so much. Why? And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of people are going to resonate who've been hurt by
Hmm.
the church, who've been hurt by people, will resonate with his name's Caden, is going to resonate with Caden's journey of we want that healing, but we don't want to love again. We're done.
Mm.
We just want to run away
Yeah.
and not be a part of this anymore.
Right.
So that's a lot of his journey that he's going to
Hmm.
be going through, and I'm just really excited to share that with people.
That's super exciting. I like that. Yeah, I do agree. I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that. And it sounds like you've got some pretty hefty themes weaving its way through this trilogy, but also um, in a way that you can read the themes without feeling threatened because it's also in the form of story. So
And it's speculative,
yeah,
which
yeah,
helps.
it does. It does.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard for me to read those oh, I don't know what they call them, like women's fiction type books where they're dealing with really heavy issues, but you feel like you're actually
Yeah.
walking through the heavy issue and it's actually really happening and
Yeah.
it's too close to home sometimes. Where this you
Yep.
can
Yep.
disassociate yourself from it just enough to live in a fantasy world while thinking about the deeper issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what probably one reason I love writing speculative is
Hmm.
because I write about real issues that real people go through,
Right.
um, but in a world where it gives them enough room to process what they're reading without feeling so uncomfortable they want to put the book down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So,
I do. I do. Well, this is exciting. So the book is called Winter's Maiden. It comes out in August. It is coming out from Enclave Publishing, but it is not the only book that Morgan Busse has written. So you have a lot of books under your belt. Where do people go if they want to find out more about you, about your books, and life in general as it relates to you?
yeah. So the best place to go is I have my website, www.morganlbusse.com.
Mhm.
It has info about me, my books, all that good stuff. I'm also active on most social media. So I hang out on Facebook, I hang out on Instagram. Those are probably my two favorite,
Okay.
especially. Yeah, those are my two favorites. So especially if you want pictures of my animals or food adventures, I love going on food adventures. I always share food that I've tried. Instagram's the place to go.
I guess. Yep.
And then I also have a newsletter that I send out when I have news to share. So I
Okay.
don't spam your folder.
That's always nice too. Yeah. I kind of go in
Yeah.
like I go in spurts. I'm like, oh, newsletter, newsletter, newsletter. And you're not going to see me for 8 months.
Right?
You
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
yeah, I try, but it is what it is. So. So, okay. So if you want to see pictures of pets and different food, and I kind of like, oh, with the food thing, because I am not daring with food at all. It's like, oh, here's macaroni and cheese. Yes, please.
Oh, I'm not so much daring, more like delicious. Like I've had people tell me
Oh,
the
okay.
way I describe food makes them so hungry. Like the latest cinnamon roll I've tried at this one place, or French toast I
Oh,
found here, or yeah, and then I try to capture the picture and make everyone drool all over the computer.
that
So,
sounds
you
like a
know,
great Instagram account to follow. I'm off to follow that
I
now.
should be a food reviewer,
You
but
should. I was gonna say either that or be in charge of like, there's got to be a job writing menus or writing like food blurbs to like sell
I need
things.
to find those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's right up your alley. Well, Morgan,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being with us today, and congrats on the
Yeah.
new book coming out. And we're so looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.